In the endless darkness of the cosmos, humanity has long looked to the sky as if it were a mirror reflecting our solitude. Yet, from time to time, within that seemingly still expanse, objects drift into our field of view, objects that unsettle the silence with their mystery. One of them is 3i Atlas, a strange traveller slicing through the solar system along a path that defies expectation, forcing astronomers to ask whether it is merely a wandering shard of ice and rock, or something far more deliberate. On the sterile stream of telescope data, anomalies begin to emerge. An unusual structure, a trajectory that slips away from the sun's pull, a reflection that does not behave like any comet ever recorded. Together, they form the outline of something both mesmerizing and suspicious, as though a distant intelligence has reached across the void to leave us a message. If 3i Atlas is not a frozen relic, but a device crafted and sent by another civilization, then we are not observing a passive drifter. We are standing before a messenger, and every messenger carries a story within it. This is a journey through science, speculation, and the boundaries of imagination. A journey we're about to take together. This is Arcane Skies. If you feel it's worth it, press like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Where are you watching from, and what time is it as you gaze at the stars with us? The solar system, so often imagined as a well-charted domain, is in truth more like a frontier outpost surrounded by infinite wilderness. Planets, moons, asteroids, and comets are but scattered beacons in a sea without end. Every so often, something crosses into this realm from the darkness beyond, a visitor from the interstellar medium, the thin fog of gas and dust that lies between stars. These visitors are rare. Before 2017, none had ever been seen. Then came Oumuamua, the first known interstellar object, sparking debates that still echo, and now another has followed. 3i Atlas, the third identified wanderer of its kind. Its very name marks its strangeness. 3i, for the third interstellar, Atlas, for the survey telescope that caught sight of it. It is not native, it does not belong, it is passing through. When astronomers first traced its path, they saw immediately that it was hyperbolic. A hyperbolic orbit is one that cannot be bound by the sun's gravity. Unlike planets, comets, or asteroids that circle endlessly, a hyperbolic traveller enters and leaves, never to return. That curve carved in space is a signature of otherness, a reminder that this object began its journey around another star, light years away, before its trajectory happened to intersect with ours. To see such a thing is like watching a stranger walk briefly across a crowded room, carrying secrets from worlds we cannot imagine. Yet 3i Atlas does not resemble the comets we know. Its brightness fluctuates in a way that resists neat explanations. Some observers note its fragments, shards that broke away, perhaps through internal pressure, perhaps through something less ordinary. Its surface reflects sunlight unevenly, suggesting not only ice sublimating into vapour, as comets usually do, but perhaps a geometry we do not yet understand. Even the speed with which it left the sun's sphere of influence seems to whisper of more than gravity at work. Science begins, as always, with skepticism. Natural explanations must be sought first. A volatile-rich core heated by the sun, outgassing jets pushing it along its path, structural weakness tearing it apart. These are the rational possibilities. But what unsettles many is that these rational possibilities never quite fit together seamlessly. Each patch of data resists being stitched into a coherent whole, like a tapestry whose missing threads invite invention, and in that absence, imagination steps forward. Could 3i Atlas be more than a comet? Could it be a probe, deliberately engineered, travelling on a mission whose purpose remains hidden? The idea may sound audacious, even reckless, but it is not without precedent in human thought. The concept of von Neumann probes, machines designed to cross interstellar space, self-replicating as they go, has long been proposed by scientists exploring the Fermi paradox. If intelligent civilizations exist, why have we not encountered their messengers? Perhaps they have already come, quietly, unrecognized. An object like 3i Atlas, entering our system without fanfare, could be precisely the kind of stealth messenger imagined in these theories. Consider its silence. A true comet announces itself with a luminous tail, gas and dust scattering in sunlight. But 3i Atlas offered no such flamboyant display. Instead, it passed with restraint, fragments drifting like whispers instead of shouts. If one were to design a craft intended not to draw attention, would it not look like this? Ordinary enough to be dismissed, but strange enough to resist certainty. As telescopes turned to follow it, questions multiplied faster than answers. Was its fragmentation natural, or was it a kind of shedding, like scales from a body built to disguise itself? Was the uneven reflection of sunlight evidence of jagged ice, or the glint of structured surfaces? Each interpretation carried both comfort and unease. To dismiss the exotic possibility was to retreat to safety. To embrace it was to admit that the sky may already have been crossed by more than stone and ice. And so 3i Atlas became not only an astronomical object but a mirror held to our imagination. In its arc we see both the rigour of science and the hunger of myth braided together. For what is science at the edge of the unknown if not an invitation to wonder? The solar system has always been porous, its boundaries permeable. Dust streams flow in, comets glide out, and between the stars there is no fence. What passes through does not ask our permission. Each interstellar wanderer reminds us that we are not isolated, that our neighbourhood is but one eddy in a current far larger than we can comprehend. And yet, when the visitor resembles a messenger, when it carries the hint of intention, the vastness becomes not only a backdrop but a stage. Imagine then a civilization older than ours, their technology matured beyond chemical rockets, beyond fragile capsules. To send a probe across the interstellar gulf would require patience spanning centuries or millennia. But to them such patience might be ordinary. For us, waiting decades for signals from our own spacecraft feels immense. For them, 1,000 years might be no more than a gesture, the rhythm of a heartbeat scaled to the cosmos. If 3i Atlas were their creation, then its quiet passage is not silence but eloquence, a reminder that the universe holds languages we have not yet learned to read. In its fading trail lies a question. Did we miss something? A signal hidden in radio silence and coded in its tumbling spin? A clue concealed in the timing of its arrival, as though to test whether our instruments were ready? Or was it perhaps a gift left deliberately ambiguous, allowing us to project our fears and hopes onto its shape? 3i Atlas is gone now, receding into the void, another spark swallowed by the black. But its brief appearance altered us, if only by widening the aperture of possibility. And in widening that aperture, it changed the way we look at every future visitor. For if even one could be a probe, then every object becomes a candidate for mystery. Out there, beyond the Kuiper belt, beyond the heliosphere, countless more wanderers travel the interstellar night. Some may be ancient ice, some may be the relics of stars, and some, just perhaps, may be artifacts of minds that learn to dream as we dream now. The question is not only what they are, but what we are becoming by asking. And so, as the last trace of 3i Atlas dissolves into distance, another thought emerges, fragile yet insistent. What if the next visitor does not come silently? The silence between stars is not empty. It is a sea of particles, a thin haze of hydrogen and dust stretched across gulfs that our minds can barely measure. Within this ocean drift objects, ancient fragments broken from the cradles of alien suns, freed by gravitational upheavals, hurled into eternity. For billions of years they have wandered, unseen, until by chance one brushes the edge of our awareness. 3i Atlas was one of these, or so we're told. Yet the deeper we look, the less the story resembles mere chance. Its arrival carried echoes of déjà vu, for only a few years earlier, the world had wrestled with the riddle of Oumuamua. That elongated enigma, tumbling through space with peculiar acceleration, left astronomers unsettled. Was it a shard of rock, or was it something else? Perhaps the sail of a vessel too ancient to remember its makers. The debate never ended, only dissolved into uncertainty, and now another interstellar traveller appeared. Lightning had struck twice, and the strike forced open questions that had not yet healed. 3i Atlas seemed to promise answers, but instead it multiplied mysteries. Its light curve, the record of how its brightness rose and fell, was erratic, as though its surface shifted in ways that natural bodies rarely do. Some argued that it was simply breaking apart, its fragile heart unable to withstand the sun's embrace. Others found in its fragments a kind of choreography, as though disintegration followed a hidden plan. When ice explodes into vapour, the chaos is violent, random, messy. But the debris of Atlas fell into patterns as though pulled by threads unseen. Science strained to interpret. Comets, after all, are unpredictable by nature. They fracture, they flare, they vanish. To see order in their disorder might be nothing more than human eyes imposing symmetry where none exists. Yet it is precisely this human instinct to seek patterns that has always driven discovery. The double helix of DNA was once only a faint X-ray shadow. The rhythm of planetary orbits once seemed as random as dust. What if the order we glimpse in Atlas is not illusion, but recognition? Consider its path. To enter the solar system, Atlas had travelled through regions of space devoid of heat, light, and witness. For millions of years it crossed the interstellar medium unscathed. Why now? Why here? The odds are immense, yet the timing is uncanny. Humanity, only in the last few decades, has built instruments capable of detecting such fleeting visitors. It is as though the universe waited until our eyes were open before letting them arrive. Coincidence, perhaps, but coincidence at cosmic scales begins to feel like choreography. Some scientists whispered of intentionality. If a civilization wished to survey young star systems, they might send probes not with engines blazing but disguised as comets. Nothing draws suspicion less than ice and rock, for they are everywhere. A disguised artifact could glide unnoticed until it met a species curious enough to question it. And what better time than now, when our telescopes sweep the skies like never before, and our minds are primed by dreams of contact. This speculation lingers on the edges of respectability, dismissed by many as fantasy. Yet fantasy has a habit of becoming tomorrow's theory. Once the idea of continents drifting across Earth's surface was considered absurd. Once the notion of invisible particles carrying force seemed delusion. The border between ridicule and revelation is thin, and sometimes crossed by accident. Perhaps Atlas stands on that border, a test of how wide we allow our imagination to stretch. And imagination is not divorced from science, it is its twin. Without it, numbers remain sterile, equations silent. With it, we dare to ask questions that data alone cannot phrase. Could Atlas have been a seed, flung into the galaxy like spores into the wind? The concept of panspermia, the spread of life through space by comets or engineered vessels, has haunted astrobiology for decades. If so, then visitors like Atlas are not only messengers, but gardeners. Each pass near a young sun could scatter dust rich with the precursors of biology, waiting for a planet to nurture them. And if the gardeners are intelligent, then perhaps what they scatter is not only chemistry, but design. The thought is staggering. To look at a comet and wonder whether its ice might cradle instructions, written not in ink but in molecules, is to see the universe not as silent, but as speaking. Even if Atlas was nothing more than fractured ice, its existence still invites the question, how many others cross the void unseen? And if one among them is more than ice, then we live not in solitude but in dialogue, a dialogue we have not yet learned to hear. Its departure left astronomers both relieved and restless. Relieved because the questions it posed were too vast to answer quickly. Restless because once the possibility has been glimpsed, it cannot be unglimpsed. Every telescope trained on the sky now watches with heightened vigilance, awaiting the next silhouette to emerge from darkness. Somewhere, another traveller is already inbound, its orbit still invisible, its presence still unknown. The night is full of them, and we have only just begun to see. As Atlas faded into distance, one thought lingered. Perhaps this was only a prelude. Perhaps the real messenger has yet to arrive. Beyond the haze of our familiar solar system lies a frontier that no spacecraft of ours has yet crossed, a threshold where the sun's breath, the solar wind, thins into silence and mingles with the currents of interstellar space. It is here, at the edge of the heliosphere, that visitors like Three-Eye Atlas first emerge into our domain. They do not announce themselves. They do not glow with purpose. They slip quietly past that invisible boundary, as though testing whether anyone is watching. The heliosphere itself is a fragile bubble, a shield inflated by the sun's magnetic field and the stream of charged particles it emits. For Earth, This shield is life itself, deflecting cosmic rays, shaping the environment in which life evolved. Yet when interstellar objects pierce it, the shield becomes a lens. Their trajectories bend slightly, their particles scatter, their secrets leak into our measurements. It is at this liminal frontier that we begin to realize just how porous our cosmic home truly is. We imagine ourselves protected, yet in reality we live inside a net whose holes are vast. Through those holes 3 Atlas entered, like a shadow slipping between threads. The first observations were almost accidental, a faint streak across a wide-field image, insignificant until its path was computed. Then the revelation: this object was not bound. The equations of celestial mechanics do not lie. If the orbit is hyperbolic, the visitor comes from beyond and will return to beyond. In that moment, a simple line of light became a message written in geometry. Atlas was not one of ours. It was from the outside. But the outside is more than distance. It is mystery itself. Interstellar space is older than Earth, older than the Sun. Within it, every fragment is an archive. The atoms locked in a shard of ice may have been born in supernovae billions of years ago, forged in explosions more violent than any we can conceive. To study Atlas is to hold a relic of stars that died before ours was born. And yet, if the relic bears signs of shaping, of intention, then it is not only a fragment of matter but of mind. The distinction matters, because matter alone tells us only where it has been. Mind tells us why. A comet fragment teaches of chemistry, of physics, of randomness. A probe disguised as comet teaches of choice, of purpose, of civilizations that think in terms we do not yet grasp. To glimpse such purpose, even in faint hints, is to confront our place in a universe that is not empty but inhabited. Atlas, in its fractured brightness, offered those hints. The fragments trailed behind it like petals shaken from a flower. But were they mere shrapnel of ice, or deliberate breadcrumbs, meant to test our instruments, to see whether we noticed the pattern? A civilization advanced enough to fling artifacts across stars might also be curious enough to measure our curiosity. Do we track? Do we calculate? Do we imagine? These questions could themselves be the experiment, and we the subjects. If this is true, then the test is subtle but profound. For the first time, humanity would not be the one pointing its probes outward. We would be the ones under observation. Our telescopes, our debates, our speculations. All of it becomes data for another intelligence, perhaps already stored, perhaps already transmitted back to wherever the journey began. The thought is unsettling, not only that we may not be alone, but that we may already have been noticed. To notice, after all, is the first step of contact. We often dream of grand messages written in radio signals or starships descending in brilliance, but perhaps real contact begins in whispers, in the smallest anomalies, a shift in orbit, a glint of light, a silence where noise was expected. Atlas may have been such a whisper, a testing of waters before any deeper plunge. The scale of such patience is difficult to grasp. Our species measures history in centuries, our projects in decades. Civilizations older than ours by millions of years might see time differently. For them, to wait for a probe to cross between stars may be as ordinary as waiting for the tide. If Atlas was sent, its mission may be one chapter in a book written across epochs, and we, with our brief span, have stumbled upon a single page. What is written on that page we cannot yet read. But the act of stumbling changes us. No longer can we dismiss the possibility that the night sky holds watchers. No longer can we claim that the void is mute. To gaze at Atlas is to admit that the universe may be layered with meaning, waiting for minds bold enough to search for it. As Atlas departed, shrinking to invisibility, it left behind a question that is both scientific and spiritual. How should we live, knowing that we may not be the first to look outward? The ancients once told stories of gods who traversed the heavens, of messengers descending from the stars. Perhaps in their myths there was a dim memory of what we now see as possibility. Perhaps the line between myth and science is not as wide as we think, but a continuum of human wonder. For if Atlas was natural, it is still extraordinary. A stone from another star, a piece of alien history passing through our sky. If it was artificial, it is more extraordinary still. A probe from another mind, its silence deliberate, its presence intentional. In both cases, it demands the same of us, to expand our sense of belonging, to see ourselves not as isolated, but as woven into a wider tapestry. And in that tapestry, the threads of time stretch forward. Another object will come, sooner than we think. Another visitor, another chance to measure, to speculate, to wonder. Perhaps the next will be clearer, bolder, less ambiguous. Or perhaps it will be subtler still, testing us again, waiting for us to learn the patience of the stars. As night falls on Earth, telescopes sweep the heavens, searching for that faint streak of light that will begin the next chapter. Somewhere in the darkness, a traveller is already on its way. There is a strange intimacy in studying an object that has crossed between stars. The light it reflects, captured by our telescopes, is not just sunlight bouncing off rock and ice. It is a conversation across distances that stagger the imagination. Each flicker in brightness, each curve in trajectory, is a sentence whispered in a language we are still learning to hear. 3 Atlas did not linger, but in its brief passage it allowed humanity to glimpse the enormity of interstellar time. To understand its journey, one must picture the galaxy not as a static disk of stars, but as a living ocean of motion. Stars orbit the galactic centre like vast schools of fish, weaving through invisible currents. Their planets, comets, and debris scatter like droplets flung from their paths. Sometimes a gravitational encounter, 2 stars passing close, or a giant planet tugging on a smaller body, hurls a fragment free. That fragment becomes a nomad, a drifter no longer tethered, condemned to wander through galactic night. Atlas was one such nomad, but the question that unsettles us is whether it was only that. If it was merely natural, then it is a relic older than any human monument. The atoms in its icy core may have condensed from a cloud that collapsed long before Earth existed, carrying in its frozen heart the chemical story of alien skies. To study such matter is to hold the past of another sun in one's hands, and yet to wonder whether the fragment has been shaped, whether intention touched it, is to confront a different kind of history, one not written by nature, but by civilization. Civilization itself is young on the cosmic stage. For most of Earth's 4.5 billion-year story, intelligence lay dormant. Only in the last heartbeat of cosmic time did a species arise that built radio telescopes, that dreamed of spacecraft. If intelligence emerged here, why not elsewhere? And if elsewhere, why not long before us? A civilization with even 1 million years of technological head start could seem godlike to us, bending time and distance into tools as mundane as stone and fire are to us. Could Atlas be the cast-off tool of such beings, drifting past us by design or accident? The possibility unsettles precisely because it feels plausible. The universe is too vast for humanity to be the only voice. Statistically, silence is the stranger option, yet silence is what we find, or so it seems. This paradox, first framed by physicist Enrico Fermi, haunts astronomy. If extraterrestrial civilizations are common, why do we not see evidence of them? One answer is that they hide, not in shadows, but in plain sight, masquerading as comets, as rocks, as drifting objects that only the most curious eyes would question. In this interpretation, 3i Atlas becomes not anomaly but clue. Of course, the scientific method demands restraint. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, as Carl Sagan once said, and evidence, in the case of Atlas, remains elusive. No signal was detected, no structure resolved in detail, only light curves, orbital data, fragments spinning into darkness, a puzzle, but not proof. Still, the imagination insists on pressing forward, for puzzles left unsolved are invitations. What if Atlas is one node in a network scattered across the stars, a breadcrumb trail of probes left by explorers who mapped the galaxy long before we awoke? Each probe, designed to drift silently, activating only when it encounters curiosity. In such a design, the act of our observation would itself be the trigger. This idea echoes the thought experiments of philosophers and scientists who ponder whether the universe is seeded with lurkers, artifacts placed in quiet orbits, waiting for civilizations to grow curious enough to find them. It is a subtle strategy. Rather than broadcasting across light years, a probe can sit silently, conserving energy, waiting for the inevitable rise of intelligence. Atlas, fleeting though it was, stirs that question. Did we encounter a lurker in motion, one not bound to a planet but drifting between suns? To consider this is to reimagine contact not as spectacle but as nuance, not flashing lights, not booming voices, but a fragment drifting across a telescope's gaze. A conversation not of words but of anomalies. If this is how civilizations speak across the abyss, then the challenge is not in listening but in noticing. And perhaps Atlas was only the first word of a language that demands centuries to read. Yet even if Atlas was only ice and rock, its journey teaches humility. It reminds us that our solar system is not an island sealed away from the galaxy, but a crossroads in an endless web of trajectories. Countless unseen objects must pass through every millennium, their paths woven by chance and gravity. To think that only now, with our modern instruments, we are learning to see them, is to realize that the universe has always been in dialogue with us. We simply lack the ears to hear. The sky is a manuscript, and every interstellar object is a fragment of text drifting between its pages. Some fragments are poetry of chemistry, others may be declarations of intelligence. The question that Three-Eye Atlas leaves us with is simple and yet infinite. Which are we reading now? As it disappears into the dark, one truth lingers. Whether natural or engineered, Atlas has reminded us that the galaxy is porous, that the walls between stars are thinner than we imagine. If the universe sends such visitors by accident, then it is generous beyond measure. If by design, then it is more alive than we dared hope. Either way, it is not silence we face, but invitation. And the invitation is not yet over. Already astronomers anticipate the next messenger, calculating probabilities, scanning skies for faint trails. Somewhere, a streak of light is inbound, and with it, perhaps another riddle. To gaze upon the night sky is to look into an archive so immense that human memory falters before it. Every point of light is not only a sun but a history, an evolving system of worlds, storms of dust, rivers of plasma, and the long patience of time. Into this archive drift the wanderers, fragments dislodged from their birthplaces, crossing the darkness like errant notes in a symphony. 3 Atlas was one of these notes, but its music did not play as expected. Its trajectory and disintegration left behind questions that ripple through both science and imagination, questions that refuse to be silenced. To understand the anomaly, one must consider the physics of comets. A comet entering the inner solar system carries within it a store of frozen gases, water, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and more, preserved since the earliest days of planetary formation. As the sun's warmth awakens these ices, they sublimate, transforming directly into vapor, creating jets that act like thrusters. These invisible thrusts alter the comet's path, pushing it in ways that gravity alone cannot explain. This phenomenon, known as non-gravitational acceleration, is familiar, even routine. And yet, when applied to Atlas, the numbers did not align. The acceleration appeared, but its magnitude and timing hinted at something more than outgassing. The scientific mind resists leaping to conclusions. It seeks coherence, models that can predict and replicate. But Atlas slipped from these models like water through fingers. Its light curve refused to stabilize, its fragments shimmered in patterns that seemed deliberate, and its silence remained unnerving. If this was outgassing, why did it not produce the familiar glowing coma, the halo of vapor that marks a comet's theatrical entry? If this was simple fracture, why did the pieces trail with such restrained choreography? The anomalies multiplied, each one small, but together they painted a portrait of something that did not want to be easily named. And so the whispers returned. Could Atlas have been engineered? The word engineered carries weight, for it suggests intent, design, purpose. If so, then we are no longer speaking of astronomy, but of contact, subtle and unspoken. Imagine for a moment a vessel cloaked in ice, its machinery dormant, its mission spanning eons. To the eye, it would appear as nothing more than frozen debris. But beneath the disguise, it could carry instruments, archives, even seeds of life. What better camouflage in a galaxy filled with comets than to look like one of them? What better way to travel undetected until curiosity evolved in the beings who watch the skies? This thought pulls us into the heart of the Fermi paradox once more. If civilizations exist, where are they? Why do we not see them? Perhaps we do see them, but we do not recognize them. Perhaps they have chosen subtlety over spectacle, patient whispers over deafening shouts, An object like Atlas slipping quietly through the solar system may be a messenger for those who measure time in millennia. For them, there is no urgency. For them, the experiment is not in what they send, but in what we notice. Consider the possibility that Atlas was never meant to communicate directly. Its role may have been to test the readiness of those who observed it. Do they dismiss anomalies as noise? Do they invent stories to fill gaps? Do they develop instruments precise enough to catch the faintest irregularities? Each reaction becomes data, transmitted not by the object itself but by our response to it. In this sense, Atlas is both messenger and mirror. It reflects not the civilization that may have sent it, but the civilization that observed it, ours. And what does it reveal of us? That we are restless, unwilling to accept silence without question, that we carry myth in our science and science in our myth, that even when faced with fragments of ice, we dream of intelligence woven into their shapes. To some, this is weakness, an indulgence in fantasy. But perhaps it is strength. For what is science without imagination, if not a machine without fuel? As Atlas receded, astronomers recorded the last data points, archived the numbers, published their models. The official verdict leaned toward fragility, a comet too weak to endure the sun's heat, breaking apart under stress. But beneath the neatness of that conclusion lingered the unease of what had not been explained. The light curves that defied simulation, the fragments that seemed too orderly, the silence that seemed too intentional, and once unease is born, it does not die. It waits, whispering, until the next visitor arrives. Somewhere beyond Neptune's orbit, beyond the Kuiper Belt's icy wastes, the Oort cloud surrounds our system like a ghostly sphere. It is there, in that distant shell, that trillions of comets slumber, waiting for a nudge from passing stars or galactic tides. Among them, perhaps, lie other travellers, some natural, some not. If Atlas was one among many, then our encounters with interstellar messengers are only beginning. Each one will bring with it the same double vision, science on one side, imagination on the other, and between them the fragile thread of wonder. The human story has always been written in thresholds: fire, language, agriculture, electricity, spaceflight. Each threshold once seemed impossible until it was crossed. Contact with another civilization may be the greatest threshold of all, and perhaps when it comes, it will not arrive in blinding lights or roaring engines, but in the subtle drift of an object like Atlas, crossing our sky almost unnoticed. Perhaps it has already come, and we are only now learning to see. The night sky remains vast, patient, unyielding, but within it, faint trails cross and recross, each one a possibility, each one a question. Atlas was a question. The answer remains unwritten. But another visitor is already inbound, and when it arrives, we will ask again, are we watching a fragment of chance or the shadow of intention? And somewhere, in the silence, the universe may be listening to our answer. In the chronology of the cosmos, human observation is a blink, a flicker of awareness against the backdrop of billions of years, and yet within that blink we have begun to see patterns where once there was only darkness. The arrival of 3i Atlas was one such pattern, an interruption in the rhythm of the familiar, like a chord struck out of place in an ancient symphony. It startled us not only because it was rare, but because it carried with it the whisper of something greater, an implication that the solar system is not sealed, that the sky above us is not a wall but a doorway. To look at Atlas through the lens of astronomy is to measure. Numbers trace its speed, angles chart its path, brightness reveals its composition. But numbers, for all their rigour, do not quiet the deeper current of thought, the possibility that we're not merely measuring matter, but deciphering intention. If Atlas was engineered, then each detail becomes a clue. Its fragmentation, instead of failure, could be strategy. Its brightness, instead of chaos, could be code. What if every shimmer of light, every subtle rotation, was a signal designed to appear as noise until a mind was ready to interpret it? Civilizations advanced enough to travel between stars would know the dangers of clarity. A message too obvious could attract not only the curious but the hostile. Subtlety, on the other hand, selects for minds that question, that wonder, that refuse to dismiss anomalies. Perhaps this is the test, not of technology, but of perception. Do we notice? Do we imagine? Do we dare to ask? Atlas becomes not just a visitor, but an examination, quiet as a shadow, but profound in its implications. Even the name Atlas carries weight, though chosen by chance. In myth, Atlas was the titan condemned to hold up the heavens. To see this interstellar fragment bearing his name feels like an accident touched by poetry, for it too holds up the heavens in its way, reminding us that the stars are not remote points but participants in a vast dialogue. Every myth humanity has told about visitors from the sky finds a new resonance here. Gods descending in fire, angels bearing messages, wheels of light. Perhaps all were early attempts to describe what is now returning to us in the cold precision of telescope images. The myth and the science are two sides of the same mirror, reflecting the same mystery from different angles. Yet to interpret Atlas as probe or messenger is to take a bold step, one that many recoil from. For if it was a probe, then the question follows immediately. From where? The galaxy is immense, 100,000 light-years across, home to hundreds of billions of stars. Even our nearest stellar neighbours are so far away that their light takes years to reach us. To imagine a probe crossing such gulfs is to imagine technologies beyond our own comprehension. Fusion drives, antimatter engines, solar sails, perhaps even methods we cannot yet articulate. The very presence of such an artifact in our sky implies a civilization that has mastered distances we still treat as impossible. And with mastery comes intention. No probe is sent without purpose. Was Atlas a scout gathering data on young planetary systems? Was it an ark carrying microscopic seeds of life? Was it an ancient machine long forgotten by its makers, now wandering blindly until chance brought it to us? Each possibility carries its own weight, its own narrative. The unsettling truth is that we cannot know. We can only infer, speculate, dream. And yet, those dreams shape the way we look at the universe. Once the thought has entered, what if this is not natural? It cannot be expelled. Every future visitor will carry with it the ghost of that question. There is a deeper layer to this unease, the possibility that such encounters are not rare at all but constant. That countless interstellar objects slip past us each year, unnoticed, their signals unexamined, their stories untold. Only now, with our instruments refined, do we begin to notice the faintest few. What, then, have we missed? What archives of alien chemistry or artifacts of ancient engineering have already come and gone, unmarked in the night? The thought is humbling. The universe may have been speaking for ages, and only now do we hear the first syllables. And yet hearing changes everything. Atlas reminds us that observation is itself a form of dialogue. To watch is to participate. Perhaps in watching we have already responded. Perhaps the very act of noticing is what was required. A signal sent back across the void. There is intelligence here. We are awake. If so, then what comes next? Will there be more, each visitor closer, each anomaly sharper, until ambiguity collapses into certainty? Or will the universe continue to speak in riddles, requiring us to grow more patient, more perceptive, before meaning is revealed? The answer may not come in our lifetimes or even in our species' span, but the question itself transforms us. To live under a sky that may harbour messengers is to live in a cosmos, alive with possibility. And possibility is the fuel of civilization. Every great leap humanity has made was first a dream, an imagining that the world could be otherwise. Fire was once only lightning, flight was once only myth, space was once only sky. Now we dream that we are not alone, that fragments like Atlas are threads in a vast web of connection. Whether or not the dream is true, it reshapes us. It draws our eyes upward, it binds our destiny to the stars. As Atlas vanishes into the abyss, leaving only calculations and memory behind, it carries with it our questions like cargo. And perhaps, far away, someone or something receives them. Because in the silence after Atlas, the night feels less empty, less final, more like a waiting room than a void. And the waiting, perhaps, is nearly over. To think of 3i Atlas as merely a comet is to take comfort in familiarity. Ice, dust, fragility. These are things we know, things that bend to our equations and surrender to our models. But comfort is a fragile shield, and Atlas pierced it. The data refused to fit neatly. The narrative of just another comet cracked, and through those cracks spilled something stranger, a sense that perhaps we were looking not at an accident, but at a design. design. The word itself trembles with implication. To speak of design in the language of astronomy is to suggest the presence of engineers beyond Earth, civilizations whose reach spans not decades but aeons. Imagine such beings, so old that their technologies have outlived their names, their artifacts wandering star to star like fossils adrift on ocean currents. To them, the galaxy would not be a barrier but a map, each system a waypoint, each wandering probe a seed. And to us, encountering one of those seeds is like stumbling across a tool left behind by giants. We cannot know its purpose, but its very presence enlarges our world. Theories blossom in such soil. One is panspermia, life seeded across the stars, carried in the bellies of comets, or hidden in the cargo of engineered probes. Atlas, breaking apart near the Sun, could have released not only dust but blueprints, organic molecules, complex chains of carbon waiting to find a cradle. If such molecules fell into Earth's atmosphere, would we even know? They might drift unnoticed, absorbed into the planet's chemistry, indistinguishable from what was already here. Perhaps our own genesis was sparked by such an arrival long ago. A message not in words but in molecules, written across the fabric of biology. Another theory cast Atlas as a sentinel, a passive recorder drifting silently until intelligence arises to notice it. Such objects need not signal actively. Their very presence is the signal. We see it, we wonder, we measure, and in doing so, we reveal ourselves. In this view, Atlas was not meant to communicate, but to provoke curiosity, and curiosity is the root of contact. For what is contact if not the recognition that another intelligence may be out there, reflecting our questions back at us? Astronomers, cautious by nature, leaned on natural explanations. Outgassing, fragmentation, pressure of sunlight, all plausible, all measurable. Yet even among them, unease remained. Not every anomaly could be smoothed away. The light curve still resisted, the debris still danced too precisely, the silence still echoed too loudly. It is in those lingering anomalies that imagination breathes, for anomalies are the boundary markers of science, the places where knowledge ends and mystery begins. Atlas in this sense was not only a comet, it was a doorway. The doorway opens onto the vast scale of galactic time. Picture a civilization millions of years old, patient beyond measure, scattering probes like seeds into the dark. Some probes fail, lost to collisions, dissolved by heat. Others wander for ages, until chance or design brings them to a system like ours. To such a civilization, the weight is nothing. Stars rise and fall, galaxies turn, and still the probes drift, silent but enduring. For us, watching Atlas for a few weeks before it vanished, the timescale feels unbearable. For them, it is the rhythm of existence. In that contrast lies a lesson. We are young, quick to demand answers, quick to tire of mystery. The universe does not answer quickly. Its replies are centuries in the making, its questions written in orbits that span lifetimes. To meet it on its terms, we must learn patience. Atlas is not only a puzzle but a teacher, instructing us in the art of waiting, of holding questions without forcing answers. And yet, there is urgency too. For each visitor that passes without our full attention is an opportunity lost. Atlas slipped away, its secrets unresolved. But the sky is restless, and more will come. Already, astronomers scan with vigilance, hoping to catch the next messenger sooner, to measure more deeply, to seek the truth before it escapes into the void. Each detection sharpens our tools, each anomaly broadens our imagination. Slowly, we are learning to listen. What if the next object does not pass silently? What if it lingers, orbiting the sun instead of fleeing it? What if its surface reflects in rhythms too precise to be natural, pulses of brightness like coded language? Would we recognize it? Would we admit what we saw, or bury it beneath safer explanations? The question is not only whether the universe is speaking, but whether we are prepared to answer. Atlas has left us with a dual inheritance, data and wonder. The data archived in numbers and graphs will be studied for decades, each reanalysis perhaps yielding new insights. The wonder, harder to measure, lingers in the imagination of those who looked up and dared to think, what if? Together they form the foundation of a new way of seeing the cosmos, not as empty, but as alive, layered with possibility, woven with voices not yet understood. The night sky remains, silent, patient, waiting. But we, changed by Atlas, no longer see it as we once did. Every streak of light could be a comet. Every comet could be more than it appears, and every mystery is an invitation. Somewhere out there, beyond the edge of our instruments, another traveller is already on its way. It moves through the interstellar dark, indifferent to our readiness, carrying within it either silence or meaning. We will not know which until it arrives, and when it does, the questions Atlas left behind will rise again, sharper, louder, impossible to ignore. Because in truth, Atlas was never only about itself, it was about what comes next. The absence of certainty is not a failure, it is a landscape. In science, the unexplainable does not close a door, it opens one. Three-Eye Atlas was such an opening, a crack in the boundary between what we believe we understand and what the cosmos quietly withholds. When it slipped through our solar system, the questions it left behind became constellations in the minds of those who studied it. Each anomaly shone like a star, and together they drew a pattern too complex, too haunting to be ignored. Among those anomalies, the most compelling was silence. Silence is not absence, it is texture, an environment in which meaning can hide. We expected noise, jets of vapour, the roar of dust illuminated by sunlight, a glowing coma to mark the comet's death. Instead, Atlas spoke in whispers. The silence was uncanny, a stage too carefully arranged. If it was natural, it was an accident of exquisite improbability. If it was not, then silence itself was a form of communication, a demonstration of restraint, of control, of patience far older than our species. Patience is the key. A civilization capable of scattering artifacts across interstellar space would not think in days or years, but in epochs. To them, the rise and fall of empires on Earth might be as brief as a gust of wind, unworthy of notice. And yet, at some moment in their own past, they might have decided to reach outward, to seed the galaxy with observers, guardians, or seeds of life. The decision would have been colossal, the patience required almost divine. And if Atlas was one of their creations, then we, fleeting and young, are only now stumbling into their experiment. But what experiment? That question divides even the boldest speculators. Some suggest surveillance, probes meant to map and measure the development of worlds, like naturalists observing animals in the wild. Others imagine it as part of a network, a galactic web of silent sentinels exchanging signals too faint for us to detect, relaying data across thousands of light years with methods beyond radio, beyond physics as we know it. Still others wonder whether these objects are seeds, vessels carrying molecular blueprints that may one day root themselves in fertile soil, repeating the story of a life again and again until the galaxy is saturated with awareness. Theories grow not because they are certain, but because the soil of mystery is fertile. Atlas left much unsaid, and in that silence humanity projected its own hopes and fears. Some saw in it the threat of hidden surveillance, a reminder that we may already be observed. Others saw a promise, that life is not a rare accident, but a universal thread woven into every star system. Both interpretations reshape our place in the cosmos, pulling us away from solitude and into a larger stage where we are no longer the only actors. The larger stage has always haunted our myths. Ancient cultures looked upward and filled the sky with stories of travellers, messengers, gods descending in fire or light. In the myths of Greece, Atlas held up the heavens themselves. In the myths of Mesopotamia, beings descended from the stars to bring wisdom or destruction. Perhaps these stories were never literal, but they captured something timeless, the intuition that the sky is not empty, that it conceals powers greater than ourselves. Science has stripped away the gods, but the intuition lingers, reborn now as speculation about alien probes and interstellar messengers. Atlas became the latest vessel for that intuition, a modern myth born not of firelight, but of data streams. And yet, unlike myths, data demands humility. It insists on what can be measured, on what can be falsified. This is why Atlas is both haunting and unsatisfying. Its anomalies hint, but they do not prove. It remains suspended between categories, both comet and question mark. But perhaps this suspension is the point. Perhaps its gift is not certainty, but possibility. In a universe so vast, Possibility is fuel. It keeps the human mind restless, creative, alive. To dismiss Atlas as only a comet is to close the door too quickly. To entertain its mystery is to keep the door open, to remain in conversation with the unknown. The conversation may have already begun. If objects like Atlas are probes, they may not broadcast in ways we expect. They may not beam radio signals or flash lights. They may listen instead, waiting for us to reveal ourselves, and reveal ourselves we have. Our radars sweep the skies. Our spacecraft carry plaques and records etched with maps to our home. Our internet hums with signals leaking into space. If Atlas was listening, it learned more about us than we learned about it. And that asymmetry is humbling. But humility is not despair. It is a posture, a way of standing before the cosmos with reverence. Atlas teaches us humility, and in doing so prepares us for what may come next. Another interstellar traveller will arrive, perhaps soon, perhaps within our lifetimes. If we are ready, if we have learned to listen more carefully, to measure more precisely, to wonder more bravely, we may catch the next one before it slips away. We may learn not only its trajectory, but its nature. We may finally know whether we are observing stone or intention. For now, all we can do is wait and watch, and let our imagination stretch to meet the scale of the galaxy. For even in waiting, something changes. The night no longer feels indifferent. Every star becomes a question. Every streak of light becomes a possibility. Every silence becomes a kind of speech. Atlas did not answer us, but perhaps in its passing it asked the first question. And questions, unlike objects, do not vanish into the void. They remain circling in our minds until the next messenger arrives to shape them into answers. The story of Three-Eye Atlas does not end with its departure. In truth, its vanishing into the dark was only the beginning, for what it left behind was not matter but resonance, a vibration in human thought, echoing long after the object itself was gone. To follow Atlas is to follow that resonance, to see how a fleeting visitor reshaped the way we gaze at the stars. For centuries the cosmos was seen as a backdrop, vast, cold, unchanging. Planets and comets traced their paths, stars burned in silence, and humanity imagined itself alone in the theatre of existence. Then came the discoveries that shattered that solitude. Exoplanets orbiting distant suns, galaxies stretching beyond count, interstellar objects wandering through our neighbourhood. Each revelation shifted the horizon of our imagination. Atlas was another such shift. It was not the first interstellar visitor, but its strangeness made it different. It refused to settle into the categories we had built. And when categories fail, imagination begins to build new ones. Some saw Atlas as part of a pattern, a sequence of arrivals too close together to be dismissed. First, Oumuamua, now Atlas. If two appeared in such short order, how many more had slipped past unnoticed? Perhaps the galaxy is teeming with them, probes and fragments drifting like plankton in a cosmic sea. To us their presence is revelation. To an ancient civilization, it may be routine. The thought is unsettling, because it reminds us of our youth. We are newcomers to the conversation, arriving late, perhaps long after others have already spoken. And what if the conversation is not meant for us? What if these messengers pass through countless systems, leaving behind signals or seeds intended for whoever is ready, and ignoring whoever is not? In that case, Atlas may have been indifferent to us, a silent traveller whose mission lies elsewhere. Yet indifference can itself be a kind of contact. To encounter what does not acknowledge us is to be reminded that the universe is not arranged for our benefit. It is a stage vast enough to host countless stories, and ours is only one of them. Still, the possibility of deliberate design lingers like a shadow. Engineers on Earth have already imagined missions that mimic comets, probes cloaked in ice to endure interstellar travel, their surfaces reflecting light in ways that make them indistinguishable from natural bodies. If we can imagine such a thing, why should others not have built it long ago? Atlas could be one such creation, a relic drifting far beyond the memory of its makers, now appearing to us as both puzzle and prophecy. The prophecy lies not in certainty, but in preparation. For Atlas forces us to ask, are we ready to detect the next one more clearly? Our telescopes are sharp, but not sharp enough. We measure light, but we do not yet land. We observe from afar, but we do not yet intercept. If the next messenger appears, Will we have the courage to chase it, to send a spacecraft to meet it, to touch its surface and read its secrets? Atlas whispers that the time has come to prepare because the universe will not wait for us. And beyond preparation lies reflection. For every anomaly we confront, every hint of intelligence we imagine, we are also revealing ourselves. We are beings who cannot help but weave stories, who see faces in shadows and intention in silence. Some would call this a flaw, a trick of pattern-seeking minds. But it may also be our strength. The capacity to imagine intention is the seed of communication. It allows us to treat the cosmos not as indifferent machinery, but as potential dialogue. And dialogue, whether real or imagined, shapes the way we act. We build better instruments. We dream larger dreams. We live with more humility before the vastness. Humility is essential because Atlas also reminds us of scale. Even if it were an engineered probe, its makers may be gone, their civilization extinct, their message orphaned by time. The galaxy is old, older than Earth, older than humanity by billions of years. Civilizations may rise and fall like sparks, each scattering artifacts into the dark. To find one is not to meet its maker, but to brush against their ghost. In this sense, Atlas is both presence and absence, both messenger and relic. And relics are powerful. They are bridges across time, proof that what once lived still leaves traces. To imagine Atlas as a relic is to imagine the galaxy as a vast archaeological site, its debris fields not only natural, but cultural. Every object could be evidence. Every interstellar traveller could carry the fingerprints of vanished minds. The stars become not only suns, but ruins. Ruins scattered across light years, waiting to be found. Whether probe, relic or comet, Atlas has done its work. It has unsettled us, awakened us, reminded us that the solar system is not a sealed chamber but a crossroad. Through it pass objects whose origins stretch far beyond our world, and each one carries a story we have only just learned to ask. The question now is not whether Atlas was natural or artificial. The question is whether we will be ready when the next visitor arrives, for in the coming decades there will be more. Our instruments will see them, our scientists will argue, our imaginations will ignite. Each one will bring us closer to the threshold where possibility becomes certainty. And perhaps on that threshold the silence will break. The vast theatre of the cosmos does not repeat itself without reason. Each event, each fleeting encounter, is a movement in a symphony older than time itself. When 3i Atlas crossed our solar system, it was not the first interstellar visitor, and it will not be the last. But it was unique in its silence, in its refusal to conform, in the questions it provoked without ever answering. It reminded us that the universe is not merely observed. It observes back, through the reflections it casts in our imagination. To follow Atlas is to follow a thread woven into the Fermi paradox, that haunting question. If life and intelligence are common, why do we not see them? For many the paradox is answered by silence. Perhaps we're alone, but Atlas complicates this answer. It hints that perhaps we do see them, only not as we expect. Perhaps they are not flashing beacons or monumental ships, but fragments, drifters, masquerading as the ordinary. In such a cosmos the extraordinary hides in plain sight, and discovery depends not on the spectacle of revelation but on the patience of attention. Patience is rare in our species. Our stories seek closure, our questions crave immediate answers, but the cosmos teaches otherwise. Its scales of time stretch beyond our endurance. Stars live for billions of years. Galaxies turn like slow dancers, their steps lasting eons. To such a stage, a century is a heartbeat, a millennium a sigh. Atlas moved according to those scales, indifferent to our urgency. It arrived when it did, it departed when it did, and no human hunger could hold it longer. That indifference is the very essence of the universe, and the test of whether we can learn to listen on its terms. For to listen is more than to measure. It is to place ourselves in a posture of humility, to accept that we may not yet have the tools to decode what we see. Atlas may have been natural, it may have been engineered, it may have been something we cannot yet classify at all. But in each possibility lies a lesson. If natural, it proves the galaxy is full of wanderers, carrying the chemical memory of alien suns. If engineered, it proves we are not the only dreamers to rise beneath the stars. If unclassifiable, it proves that our categories are incomplete. that we stand at the edge of greater knowledge yet to be born. This edge is where civilizations grow. The Greeks once stood at the edge of myth and reason, asking whether lightning was the hand of Zeus or the dance of natural forces. The astronomers of the Renaissance stood at the edge of a universe centered on Earth, or one centered on the sun. Now we stand at another edge. Is the universe lifeless save for us, or alive with others whose traces drift across our sky? Atlas pressed us against that edge, forcing us to see how thin the boundary has become. The image of Atlas breaking apart near the sun lingers like a parable. To some, it was weakness, a fragile comet undone by heat. To others, it was revelation, a transformation that revealed its true nature. Every civilization faces its own kind of fragmentation. Some collapse under pressure, scattering into silence. Others evolve, turning fragmentation into new forms, new expressions. Atlas may mirror us more than we realize, a traveler under strain, breaking but not gone, leaving fragments as messages for whoever will gather them. And those fragments, though small, shimmered with meaning. They reminded us that not all messages come as wholes. Some come as shards, requiring us to piece them together, to imagine the original from the ruins. Archaeologists do this with pottery. Astronomers do it with starlight. Perhaps one day we will do it with probes drifting through space, reconstructing from fragments the story of civilizations long past. Atlas could be one such shard, a fragment of a story too large to read in one glance. To live in such a universe is to embrace wonder. Wonder is not naivety, it is courage. It is the willingness to dwell in questions without forcing answers, to see mystery not as failure but as invitation. Atlas invited us to wonder on scales both vast and intimate. Vast in its journey across light years, intimate in the flickers of light recorded by our telescopes, flickers that spoke directly to the human eye and imagination. Even now, as it recedes into the abyss, Atlas reshapes how we look at the next visitor. Every astronomer knows there will be another. Somewhere in the darkness, another interstellar object is already inbound, its orbit invisible, its name not yet given. Perhaps it will be ordinary, a lump of ice. Perhaps it will be extraordinary, a probe cloaked in disguise. Either way, it will carry with it the weight of Atlas. For Atlas taught us that no visitor can be dismissed without question. Each one is an opportunity, each one a dialogue with the unknown. And dialogue is what transforms. To stand beneath the night sky now is to feel that it is not empty, not silent, not indifferent. It is alive with possibility, alive with echoes of other minds, alive with the promise that our story is not the only one being written. Atlas did not speak, but it changed the language in which we listen, and that change may be the first step toward the moment when silence becomes speech. For silence never lasts forever. It is always the pause before the next note. The memory of Thruas Atlas lingers not in its matter but in its absence. It came, it fractured, and it was gone. Yet in its departure it left a shadow upon human thought, a reminder that the cosmos is not a static canvas, but a restless ocean of arrivals and departures. In that shadow something profound stirs, the recognition that we are no longer passive spectators of the universe, but participants in an unfolding dialogue we scarcely comprehend. Every civilization throughout history has wrestled with the question of the beyond. The ancients lifted their eyes to constellations and wove gods and myths from the patterns of stars. In temples and caves, they painted visions of beings descending from the heavens. These were not idle tales, but reflections of a timeless human instinct, the conviction that the sky holds secrets, that what lies above is connected to what lies within. Today, our myths are written not on stone walls, but in the lines of data captured by telescopes. Yet the essence remains unchanged. We are still translating shadows into meaning. Atlas is only the latest shadow, but perhaps the most enigmatic of all. To treat it only as a comet is to simplify. To treat it as a probe is to speculate. But perhaps both are too narrow. What if Atlas was something in between? A hybrid of nature and technology, a relic born of cosmic chemistry but altered by intelligence. The idea may sound strange, but it mirrors our own behaviour. We already send spacecraft wrapped in protective shells, using natural forces to aid their journeys. We speak of mining asteroids, of redirecting comets, of harnessing natural objects as vessels. If we can dream such things at the dawn of our spacefaring age, why should older civilizations not have done so long ago? Atlas could have been a comet repurposed, a natural fragment made into a carrier for something more. And if so, then its fragmentation was not its end, but its function. Breaking apart may have been the way it dispersed its contents, molecules, instruments, or signals too faint for our current tools to detect. What we saw as disintegration may have been delivery. The sun's heat, instead of destroying it, may have activated it. In this reading, Atlas fulfilled a mission, subtle and silent, that we were not yet prepared to understand. Such speculation touches on a deeper anxiety, that the universe may already be full of signs, but our vision is still too narrow to read them. Our instruments are tuned to what we expect: radio waves, visible light, chemical traces. But what if communication hides in patterns of fragmentation, in gravitational anomalies, in quantum fluctuations woven into starlight itself? Atlas could have been such a signal, one designed not for our present level of understanding, but for what we may one day become. The cosmos may be patient enough to leave messages that wait for centuries until intelligence grows into the right shape to hear them. This patience is alien to us, but it may be the defining trait of civilizations that endure. Our species burns through centuries in the blink of an eye, rising and falling in tides of war and empire, yet the stars demand another rhythm. To cross the gulfs between them requires the endurance of mountains, the foresight of rivers, the memory of forests. A civilization that survives long enough to send probes like Atlas would have learned to think not in years, but in millennia. Their messages would not be written for instant replies, but for the slow unfolding of discovery. Atlas, silent and brief in our sky, may have been part of such a conversation, its words stretched across thousands of years. Whether natural or engineered, Atlas leaves us with the same imperative: to pay attention. For inattention is the true danger. How many interstellar objects have passed unnoticed, slipping through before we had the instruments to catch them? How many have left behind traces that we dismissed as noise? Each one could have been an opportunity, a question posed by the cosmos, awaiting an answer we failed to give. The tragedy is not that we lack contact, but that we may have missed it. Atlas reminds us that the universe does not repeat opportunities forever. We must be ready. And readiness means more than building telescopes. It means cultivating imagination, the courage to entertain hypotheses that feel implausible, the humility to admit when our models fall short. To see Atlas as a messenger may prove wrong, but to refuse to ask the question would be worse. For silence in the face of mystery is not science, it is surrender. The night sky, after Atlas, no longer feels indifferent. Each point of light is now a potential, each streak across the dark a candidate for meaning. In its absence, Atlas has filled the sky with presence. We watch differently. We wonder differently. And that difference may be the first step toward the next great threshold of human history. For somewhere beyond the veil of our current perception, another traveller is inbound. It moves silently, indifferent to our anticipation, carrying with it either nothing but rock and ice, or everything: a message, a memory, a revelation. We will not know until it arrives, but when it does, the shadow of Atlas will fall across it, shaping how we see, how we measure, how we dream. And perhaps this time we will not let it pass unheeded. The memory of Atlas is not just an astronomical footnote, it is a mirror held up to the human condition. For what unsettled us most was not the object itself, but our own response to it, the unease, the hesitation, the hunger to assign meaning. Atlas revealed more about us than about itself. In its fragments we saw reflected the fragility of our knowledge, the ambition of our imagination, and the restlessness of our longing to know whether we are truly alone. The image of a comet breaking apart is haunting. To the scientific eye, it is a process governed by physics, solar heat expanding volatile gases, pressure building until the body fractures. But to the poetic eye, it is a metaphor. Atlas disintegrating near the sun becomes the story of all fragile travellers, civilizations, species, even stars that draw too close to forces beyond their endurance. It is a parable of mortality written across the heavens. Yet in its ruin there was also beauty. The fragments did not vanish at once, they scattered into delicate trails glowing briefly before fading. Even in its dissolution, Atlas created wonder. Even in death, it spoke. And so the question arises, what if this was not only destruction, but revelation? What if its breaking was the unveiling of what lay hidden inside? Civilizations too reveal themselves most clearly at the moment of fracture. When empires collapse, when systems fail, when certainties dissolve. In such moments, what was once concealed becomes visible. Perhaps Atlas was no different. Perhaps its fragmentation was the release of its true message, scattered into space like seeds. If so, then we did not yet have the eyes to read them. But the seeds are out there still, drifting in orbits we may one day recover. This line of thought touches a deeper current. The possibility that interstellar probes are not machines in the way we imagine, but something more organic, more hybrid. The boundary between technology and nature is a human distinction. Advanced civilizations may blur it. A probe could be part ice, part machine, designed to break apart and release spores of information. Its function could be indistinguishable from biology, just as our own bodies carry the genetic codes of ancestors long dead. To see Atlas this way is to see it not as an object, but as a living archive, an artifact that behaves more like an organism than a machine. Such speculation may sound like fantasy, but it is rooted in ideas already alive in our own laboratories. Synthetic biology, self-replicating systems, artificial cells. These are early steps toward a future where machines and life converge. If we can dream of it now, what might be possible for civilizations millions of years older? For them, probes may not be built but grown, and Atlas, in its strange silence, could have been such a grown artifact, drifting like a seed pod through the galaxy until it encountered sunlight strong enough to awaken it. If this is true, then the solar system is not merely a stage for celestial mechanics, but a garden, a place where seeds fall, where some take root and others drift onward. The concept of panspermia, the seeding of life across worlds, takes on new weight in this light. Perhaps our own planet was once visited by such seeds, billions of years ago, before consciousness had even stirred. Perhaps Earth itself is the result of such a garden, and Atlas was a reminder of that ancestry. Even if these ideas remain speculation, their power is undeniable. They stretch our imaginations, they challenge our certainties, they prepare us for futures we cannot yet name. For science is not only about answers, it is about preparing the mind to recognize answers when they come. Atlas, by defying easy categorization, trained us to think differently, to expand the scope of what counts as possible. That is its true legacy. And yet, legacy is not enough. The memory of Atlas sharpens into urgency when we consider the future. What if another visitor arrives tomorrow? What if its trajectory carries it close enough for us to intercept, to send a spacecraft to meet it? Would we hesitate, or would we act? Technology now brings such missions within reach. With enough preparation, humanity could chase the next interstellar traveller, touch it, sample it, know it not as rumour but as fact. Atlas may have slipped away, but its memory fuels the will to catch the next. That will is not only scientific but existential. For every encounter with the unknown reshapes how we see ourselves. Atlas reminded us that the solar system is not isolated, that our planet is not alone, that the galaxy is not silent. In its brief arc across our sky, it pulled us out of our solitude and into a wider community of possibility. Whether or not other civilizations exist, the very act of imagining them changes us. It enlarges our sense of destiny. It stretches the boundaries of hope. And hope, too, is a kind of propulsion. Just as the sun's heat propelled Atlas along its path, our hope propels us toward the stars. Hope that we are not alone. Hope that the cosmos is alive with intelligence. Hope that in reaching outward, we will find not emptiness but kinship. Atlas carried that hope with it, even as it vanished, even as its fragments dissolved into space. In its absence, it left behind a presence, the presence of a question that cannot be silenced. For in the end, Atlas was not only a comet, not only a possible probe, it was a question, and questions are more powerful than answers. They endure, they grow, they call us forward into futures we cannot yet imagine. Atlas asked us, what if? What if you're not alone? What if the silence is not silence at all? What if the visitors have already come and you're only now learning to see them? and somewhere beyond the reach of our eyes another question is already on its way. The path of Three-Eye Atlas has already slipped beyond the reach of our instruments, yet its shadow lingers, carved into the imagination of those who dared to follow its brief performance. What remains is not simply the record of numbers and curves, but a haunting recognition. The solar system is not a closed garden. It is porous, open to travellers from beyond, and each one may carry with it echoes of stories older than the Earth itself. To speak of Atlas is to speak of thresholds. Every interstellar object is a threshold between the familiar and the unknown, between what science can measure and what imagination dares to suggest. Atlas crossed that threshold with grace, and in doing so, it invited us to do the same. The threshold it opened was not only spatial, stretching from our sun into the wider galaxy, but temporal as well. Its journey had lasted millions of years before our species had even learned to strike sparks from stone. For all of human history, Atlas was already on its way, drifting through the interstellar dark. Its encounter with us was not planned by us, it was inherited, like a message written long before we had eyes to read. In this sense, Atlas becomes a mirror of time itself. It reminds us that the cosmos does not move to the rhythm of our civilizations. Empires rise and fall, cultures bloom and wither, yet Atlas drifts on, indifferent. And yet, in its indifference, it also becomes intimate. For what are we, if not wanderers ourselves? We too are fragments cast into the current of the universe, uncertain of our destination. To see Atlas is to see our reflection, fragile, transient, yet moving across scales larger than we can imagine. There is a quiet terror in this recognition. If Atlas was only a comet, then it was still a messenger, bearing to us the chemical archives of alien suns. But if it was more than that, if it bore intention, design, or remnants of a civilization, then its silence is more profound than any signal. Silence in that case would not be absence, but choice. It would mean that the message was not to be shouted, but whispered. That the act of noticing was the message itself. This possibility reframes our role in the cosmos. We often imagine contact as something dramatic, a ship descending, a transmission intercepted, an unmistakable sign of intelligence. But Atlas suggests another form of contact, one suited to a universe where patience is measured in millennia. Contact may come as ambiguity, as anomaly, as the refusal of an object to behave as expected. In such ambiguity lies a test, not of our technology alone, but of our imagination, our willingness to sit with uncertainty. And uncertainty is the most fertile ground for growth. Civilizations do not evolve through answers, but through questions. Atlas has given us one of the most profound questions we have faced. What if? What if the galaxy is alive with minds, leaving traces subtle enough to be dismissed by the uncurious? What if the proof of our not being alone has already brushed past us, hidden in plain sight? What if contact has already begun, not in signals, but in presence? To live with such questions is to be changed. It forces us to build sharper instruments, to scan the skies with more persistence, to prepare missions that can intercept future visitors. More than that, it forces us to expand the horizon of our thought, to see the galaxy not as indifferent but as inhabited, not as silent but as layered with voices too faint for us yet to hear. Atlas, in its silence, has already altered the trajectory of our imagination. That trajectory will not vanish. It arcs forward, like the path of Atlas itself, carrying us into futures where the question of solitude will no longer be theoretical. But solitude is not the only question Atlas leaves us. There is also vulnerability. For if we are not alone, then we are observed. If Atlas was engineered, then whoever sent it now knows of us, while we know nothing of them. This imbalance is unsettling. It reminds us of the fragility of our place in the cosmos. And yet, even here, there is a kind of grace. To be observed is also to be acknowledged. It means we are no longer invisible. It means we are part of a story larger than ourselves. The story does not end with Atlas. It cannot. For already astronomers anticipate the next interstellar visitor. The instruments that detected Atlas continue their watch, scanning the darkness with relentless patience. Somewhere, in the silence of interstellar space, another traveller is moving toward us. It carries with it either silence or revelation, but either way it will arrive. And when it does, we will remember Atlas, and we will ask again, is this only stone and ice, or is this intention? Perhaps that is the gift Atlas has left us. Not answers, but readiness. It has taught us to watch more carefully, to wonder more bravely, to accept that the line between natural and artificial is thinner than we once believed. It has prepared us for futures in which every interstellar visitor is a messenger, whether by accident or by design. And so we wait, under a sky no longer silent, no longer empty, a sky alive with questions, alive with possibility, a sky where the next messenger may already be on its way, carrying with it the next chapter of this unfolding dialogue. Because if Atlas has taught us anything, it is that the silence of the universe is not indifference, it is an invitation. There is a peculiar weight in knowing that a fragment of another star system has passed so close, and that we could do nothing but watch it vanish. The departure of 3i Atlas was not a failure of science, it was a reminder of scale. Our telescopes are powerful, yet they are still children's toys when measured against the immensity of the galaxy. We recorded light, we plotted paths, we modelled possibilities, but the visitor itself slipped away, irretrievable. In this sense, Atlas was not only a messenger but a challenge, a quiet demand. If you want to know more, you must go further than this. The idea of going further leads us into the realm of interception. Already, visionaries speak of missions designed to chase interstellar objects, to meet them not with questions shouted from afar, but with instruments pressed against their very surfaces. A spacecraft built with foresight could wait in the outer solar system, ready to launch at a moment's notice, to pursue the next messenger as it arrives. Such a mission would not only be a triumph of engineering but a declaration that humanity refuses to remain a passive observer, that we will meet the cosmos not only with imagination but with reach. Atlas, in its elusiveness, ignited that determination. But technology is only one part of the answer. The deeper preparation lies in how we think. For if another visitor comes and it carries anomalies stranger than Atlas, how will we respond? Will we dismiss what does not fit into our models? Or will we risk the courage of imagination, the willingness to admit that not everything we see is yet understood? To prepare is not only to build faster rockets, but to build minds flexible enough to face the unfamiliar without retreating into denial. Atlas asked this of us, though many did not hear the question. The question also reaches into philosophy. For if Atlas was artificial, even in part, then we must reframe our understanding of civilization itself. We imagine civilizations as bounded by their planets, their stars, their lifespans. But a probe drifting for millions of years across interstellar space is a civilization extended, an echo of intention that outlives its makers, a fragment of thought moving through eternity. In this sense, Atlas could have been not only an object but a survivor, carrying within it the persistence of minds long vanished. To encounter such a survivor is to realize that civilizations may not die as we do. They may scatter themselves into the dark, leaving behind artifacts that wander until they are found. And in being found, they transform those who discover them. For us, Atlas was not a fragment of another world, but a mirror. It reflected our anxieties about solitude, about vulnerability, about the limits of our perception. It reflected our hopes that the universe is not barren, that intelligence is not unique, that our story is part of something larger, and it reflected our hunger for contact, for meaning, for proof that we belong to a cosmos alive with others. Every interpretation of Atlas, from the most cautious to the most daring, was less about Atlas itself than about us. Yet perhaps that was the point. If Atlas was designed, its makers may not have intended to give us answers. They may have intended only to provoke questions, to awaken the impulse to wonder, to teach us to look more carefully, to imagine more boldly. A civilization that thinks in millennia would not rush to communicate in direct words. It would seed curiosity instead, trusting that curiosity would grow into readiness. Atlas, then, was less a message than a spark that may burn for centuries in the human mind long after the object itself has vanished. Even if Atlas was natural, it still carried the same spark. For the cosmos itself is a teacher, indifferent yet eloquent. A fragment of ice from another star system is still a revelation, still a reminder that we are not isolated. It is proof that the galaxy is dynamic, that its pieces intermingle, that no star system stands alone. To hold such proof in our telescopes, even briefly, is to feel the boundary between here and elsewhere dissolve. The universe becomes less distant, less abstract. It becomes continuous, flowing, shared. And in that continuity lies a subtle truth. If fragments can cross between stars, then so can we. Atlas was not only a visitor, it was a precedent. It showed us that the journey is possible, that objects can travel across light years and still endure. That space is not an impenetrable wall, but a navigable ocean. One day, we too may send our own atlases into the dark, probes that will drift for millennia, carrying our questions, our knowledge, our essence. And perhaps, just as we now wonder about Atlas, some other species will one day wonder about us. To imagine this is to feel both small and immense. Small because our present reach is fragile. Immense because our potential is limitless. Atlas sits at the intersection of these truths, a reminder that the gulf between them is bridged not by certainty, but by courage. Courage to ask, to imagine, to act. Courage to look into silence and hear invitation. And so we wait for the next visitor. Somewhere, even now, another interstellar traveller is inbound. Its orbit is unseen, its surface unknown, its nature undecided, but it is coming. And when it arrives, the memory of Atlas will be waiting to meet it, shaping our questions, sharpening our vision. Because the cosmos does not speak in a single voice. It speaks in fragments, in whispers, in visitors like Atlas. And if we learn to listen, one day those whispers will become a conversation. The departure of Three-Eye Atlas did not erase it from the human story. Instead, it made it larger. For what is gone becomes myth, and what is myth becomes the fuel of imagination. In the emptiness it left behind, Atlas grew more powerful than when it was present. It became not only an object but a symbol, a reminder that the universe is full of visitors whose stories we have only begun to notice. Astronomers continue to refine their instruments, to sharpen their surveys of the night. New telescopes will scan the heavens with eyes more patient, more sensitive, able to detect the faintest streak of light before it slips away. In the coming decades, we will not merely record the paths of interstellar travellers, we will prepare to meet them. Missions are already being sketched on whiteboards and simulated on computers. Spacecraft that wait in orbit, ready to launch the moment another messenger appears, racing outward to intercept it before it fades into darkness. In this way, Atlas has seeded not only questions but ambitions. Yet the greater change lies not in technology, but in perspective. For Atlas forced us to confront the possibility that the galaxy is alive with subtle presences, and that contact may not look as we once imagined. We dream of grand encounters, of signals flashing across space, of unmistakable signs of intelligence. But what if contact is quieter, more patient, more disguised? What if the universe speaks not in thunder but in whispers, in anomalies that reveal themselves only to those willing to look deeper? Atlas was such a whisper. To dismiss it is to risk missing the conversation altogether. This shift reshapes our relationship to the sky. Once we looked upward and saw distance, and unreachable elsewhere. Now we look and see possibility, hints of presence, traces of minds that may already be woven into the cosmos. The night is no longer silent. It is full of questions, and questions change us. They stretch our imagination, they humble our certainty, they prepare us for futures that might once have seemed impossible. Among those futures is one in which humanity itself becomes the sender of atlases. One day, our own probes may drift between the stars, silent and disguised, carrying fragments of our world to be discovered by others. Perhaps we will use asteroids as carriers, or comets as cloaks, just as we suspect others may have done. And when those probes are found, long after we're gone, they will provoke in their finders the same questions Atlas has provoked in us. Thus, discovery becomes reciprocity. Just as we wonder about them, so too may they wonder about us. But this reciprocity carries with it responsibility. For if we are to join this interstellar dialogue, we must decide what we wish to say. Will our probes carry only data, or also memory? Will they bear messages of warning, or of welcome? Will they present us as conquerors of Earth, or as stewards of it? The way we answer these questions will shape not only how others see us, but how we see ourselves. Atlas reminds us that even silence is communication. If our probes say nothing, their very presence will still speak. It will say we were here and we reached outward. Silence, then, is never empty. The silence of Atlas was heavy with meaning, whether natural or intentional. Its refusal to conform to our expectations forced us to look inward as much as outward. What did we hope for? What did we fear? Did we want Atlas to be only a comet, so that the universe remained simple? Or did we long for it to be a probe, so that solitude would finally end? Our interpretations revealed as much about our inner world as about the outer one. In this way, Atlas was both cosmic and intimate, both interstellar and deeply human. It also reminded us of scale. The galaxy is 100,000 light-years wide. Stars are born, live and die across spans of billions of years. Against such scales, our questions are young, our tools primitive, our lifespans brief. And yet, in the arc of Atlas, we touched those scales. For a moment, our tiny instruments intersected with an object that had wandered for ages through the galactic dark. In that intersection, we glimpsed both our smallness and our potential. We may be brief, but we are capable of noticing, and to notice is to begin. Perhaps that is the true meaning of Atlas, not proof of alien intelligence, not certainty of design, but the awakening of awareness. To see Atlas was to realize that our solar system is not sealed, that the galaxy is not distant, that the universe is not indifferent. It was to realize that we are already participants in a larger story, whether we understand it or not. And so, the legacy of Atlas is not closure but anticipation. Anticipation for the next visitor, anticipation for the next anomaly, anticipation for the day when silence breaks into unmistakable presence. That day may not come in our lifetimes, but it will come, for the universe is too vast, too restless, too alive with possibility to remain silent forever. Until then, we watch, we wait, we wonder. The sky is no longer only a backdrop, it is a stage, and on that stage the next act has already begun its journey toward us. The story of Three-Eye Atlas deepens when we remember that it was not alone. It followed in the wake of Oumuamua, the first recognized interstellar object, and it preceded others still waiting to be found. The pattern is unmistakable. Our solar system is not an isolated chamber, but a crossroad through which wanderers pass, carrying fragments of other worlds, other suns, and perhaps other minds. In this realization lies a quiet revolution. We no longer live under a dome of separation, but within a river of exchange that flows between the stars. Consider what this means for our sense of belonging. For most of human history, Earth was imagined as the center of all things. Then, painfully, we learned we orbited the Sun. Later still, we discovered that the Sun itself was one among billions, circling the galactic core like a grain of sand in a storm. Each revelation diminished our centrality but expanded our horizon. Atlas carried that expansion further. It reminded us that the galaxy is not only background, it is interactive, dynamic, alive with movement. Our solar system is porous, open to visitors, vulnerable to encounters, and if we can be visited, then one day we too may visit in return. The very idea challenges our imagination. To cross interstellar space is not like crossing an ocean or even leaping between planets. It is to set out on a journey where centuries are the shortest units of time. Such journeys cannot be powered by urgency. They must be powered by patience. Atlas embodied that patience. Whether fragment of ice or engineered artifact, it had travelled for millions of years before brushing our awareness. For us, who count lifetimes in decades, the scale is almost unbearable. Yet to imagine civilizations that think in those terms is to glimpse the kind of endurance required to survive the universe. That endurance reshapes how we think about contact. We long for immediate proof, for unambiguous signals, for sudden revelation. But the cosmos does not hurry. It speaks in fragments, in hints, in arrivals like Atlas, enigmatic, brief, suggestive. Perhaps this is contact not as we dreamed it, but as it truly unfolds, slowly, ambiguously, with room for us to grow into understanding. The silence of Atlas may not have been absence, but pedagogy, an invitation to patience, to attention, to humility. And humility is essential, for the possibility that Atlas was artificial cannot be dismissed without consequence. If it was, then it was created by minds so far beyond ours that their motives may be incomprehensible. We imagine probes sent to gather data, to seed life, to signal presence, but their purposes may be stranger. Perhaps they are rituals, artifacts of religion or philosophy as much as science. Perhaps they are works of art, placed into the galaxy like sculptures meant to endure beyond the lifespans of their makers. To interpret them only through our utilitarian lens may be to miss their essence entirely. But even if Atlas was wholly natural, its presence is still profound. It carried with it the chemistry of another system, the frozen memory of conditions light years away. To study such fragments is to read a page from the diary of another star. Already, scientists dream of capturing and analysing material from future interstellar visitors, to taste the diversity of galactic matter, to compare it with our own. In doing so, we would begin to weave the first scientific tapestry of the Milky Way, a map not only of stars but of the fragments they scatter between them. Atlas was the herald of that new science, the promise that the galaxy's archives are not closed but passing constantly through our skies. Yet beyond science there is symbolism. Atlas became a canvas upon which we projected our fears and hopes. The fear of being observed, the hope of not being alone, the wonder of connection across impossible distances. In this way, it united myth and astronomy. Just as ancient cultures once saw omens in comets, so too did we see possibility in Atlas. The difference is not in the impulse but in the tools. We no longer read the sky with superstition, but with telescopes and equations. Yet the awe is the same. Atlas proved that awe is eternal, that it transcends eras, that it is as much a part of us as breath. And awe is what drives us forward. It fuels the dream of missions that wait in the dark, ready to intercept the next visitor. It fuels the imagination of technologies that could propel us across the interstellar gulf. It fuels the courage to admit that what we know is not all that is, that mystery is not an obstacle but a horizon. Atlas, silent though it was, left us with that fuel, and it burns still in the minds of those who watched. The night sky has not changed. Stars still blaze, comets still wander, planets still turn. But our perception has changed. Every faint object is now a candidate for wonder. Every unexpected trajectory is now a question. Every visitor from beyond is now a potential messenger. The sky, once backdrop, is now alive with potential meaning, and in that aliveness lies transformation. We are no longer a species staring at silence, but a species listening for whispers. Somewhere, another interstellar traveller is already on its way. Perhaps it carries only rock, perhaps it carries memory, perhaps it carries both, entwined in a form we cannot yet name. Whatever it carries with it the legacy of Atlas, for Atlas has taught us to ask, to notice, to wonder. When the next arrives, we will be ready, not with answers, but with better questions. And questions are the true beginning of dialogue. Because the universe does not begin conversations with certainty. It begins with questions, carried in silence. Atlas was such a question, and somewhere beyond the next question is already approaching, written in the dark. The trail of Thri Atlas has long since vanished into the abyss, yet in our collective imagination it still burns like an ember. For objects like this are not just physical intrusions into our solar system, they are intrusions into our worldview. They tear open the veil of familiarity and remind us that the galaxy is not distant theatre, but active terrain, one we share with wanderers that pass through without warning. Atlas did not ask permission to enter. It simply arrived, indifferent to our readiness, and left us altered in its wake. To trace its journey backward is to confront the immensity of time. Where did it come from? Was it dislodged from the icy reaches of some distant star's Oort cloud, flung outward by gravitational chaos? Did it begin its voyage before humanity even evolved, travelling across interstellar gulfs while our ancestors still gathered around firelight? The mind falters at such spans, yet this is the natural rhythm of the universe. For us, Atlas was a brief anomaly lasting months. For itself, it was a journey lasting millions of years. We were merely a momentary audience, a flicker of awareness in a much longer story. And what of its destination? Even now it sails away, unbound by the sun's pull, returning to the sea of stars. Perhaps it will drift for another eon before brushing past some other system. Perhaps it will wander forever, never seen again. To us, its exit feels like a loss. To the cosmos, it is only continuity, one more ripple in an endless tide. Yet even in that continuity lies a profound thought, that we may not have been its only audience. If Atlas was artificial, it may have been designed to be encountered again and again, carrying its silent message across multiple civilizations, testing each in turn. We were simply next in line. Such a design would demand a patience beyond anything we know. Imagine building an artifact not to speak to neighbours, not to return within decades, but to wander indefinitely, trusting that someday, somewhere, it will be noticed. It is less like communication and more like planting a forest, scattering seeds into the dark with no certainty of where they will take root. This is the patience of stars themselves. For if Atlas was crafted, then its makers must have thought in terms of epochs, not lifetimes. And in that patience lies a hint of how civilizations might endure. The endurance of civilizations is itself a mystery. We measure our own in centuries, watching them rise and collapse with frightening regularity. If other intelligences exist, how many have already vanished? How many left only relics drifting in silence, their voices extinguished but their artifacts still wandering? Atlas could be such a relic, a survivor of a vanished people, now mute but still carrying their echo. If so, then to encounter it is to perform archaeology on a galactic scale, uncovering ruins not in deserts or mountains but in orbits and trajectories. Every interstellar visitor could be such a ruin, and every ruin could be the key to remembering those who came before. But even ruins speak if we are willing to listen. The pyramids speak of ambition, the cave paintings of memory, the broken pottery of everyday life. If Atlas was a ruin, then what did it speak of? Its silence may have been its voice. Its fracture may have been its testimony. It told us of fragility, of journeys too long for survival, of persistence even in decay. In this way, Atlas became not only a puzzle, but a parable, a story about endurance, mortality, and the traces civilizations leave behind. And yet, whether artifact or comet, Atlas served the same purpose. It widened our sense of scale. It reminded us that Earth is not the center, that the solar system is not isolated, that even the galaxy itself is not empty. It reminded us that to be human is to live within currents we cannot yet measure fully. And it whispered a deeper truth, that our longing to know, to connect, to belong, is itself part of the cosmos. For the cosmos does not only create matter, it creates longing. And longing is the bridge between silence and meaning. That longing now drives us toward preparation. Missions are being imagined, projects planned, to chase the next interstellar visitor. When it arrives, we may not be powerless. We may send a probe to meet it, to taste its dust, to touch its surface, to bring back more than questions. The legacy of Atlas is not its silence, but the urgency it left behind. We cannot afford to let the next one pass unheeded, and so humanity waits, not passively, but with readiness growing, with instruments sharpening, with imaginations burning. For there will be a next one. The galaxy is restless, and the solar system is porous. Even now another traveller moves unseen through the dark, inbound toward our awareness. Perhaps it carries only ice. Perhaps it carries more. Either way, when it comes, we will see it through the lens Atlas left us, with suspicion, with wonder, with readiness. Atlas has already transformed us. It has taken its place among the great thresholds of perception, moments when humanity's gaze widened and could never shrink again. Like the first sight of Earth from orbit, like the first discovery of a planet around another star, Atlas became a doorway, and once through that doorway we cannot return. The cosmos is no longer empty, it is alive with possibility. To imagine the path of 3 Atlas is to imagine a thread woven through the tapestry of the galaxy. It began somewhere unknown, perhaps in the outer halo of a star that has since vanished, perhaps in a planetary system long destroyed. From there it drifted, nudged by gravity, carried across light years. It crossed starfields, nebulae, and voids so deep that even starlight struggles to pass through. For ages it travelled unseen, until at last it brushed the edge of our solar system, and for a brief moment its trajectory intersected with our awareness. Then it was gone again, swallowed by the same silence that had carried it to us. But awareness is transformative. Before Atlas, humanity had known only one interstellar wanderer, Oumuamua. Its elongated body and unexplained acceleration shocked us into realizing that the galaxy does not keep its fragments contained. When Atlas arrived, the shock gave way to pattern. These objects were not singular miracles, they were part of a constant flow. Suddenly, the cosmos felt less like a distant stage and more like a conversation in which we had heard only the faintest syllables. In that conversation, silence is not empty. Silence is structure. Atlas spoke in silence. No tail blazing, no radio beacon transmitting, no obvious signal. And yet, its refusal to fit into our models was itself a kind of language. It said, "Not everything you see will fit into the categories you have built. You must grow beyond them." This is how the universe teaches, by refusing to be small enough for our boxes. Atlas was not a failure of understanding. It was a syllabus of humility. Humility is not weakness. It is clarity, the recognition of scale. To measure Atlas was to confront the limits of our reach. We could not chase it. We could not capture it. We could not hold it in our hands. All we could do was watch, measure, and imagine. But imagination is not lesser. It is the beginning of expansion. Every great leap of human history began in imagination before it became technology. Fire was once a mystery. Flight was once a dream. Now interstellar interception, once unthinkable, is beginning to stir in the minds of engineers. In this way, Atlas seeded more than questions. It seeded futures. And those futures are not only scientific, but philosophical. If Atlas was natural, then we live in a galaxy filled with travelers, countless archives of alien chemistry brushing against our system, each one carrying the story of a distant sun. If Atlas was artificial, then we are already within the reach of another civilization, already part of a network we do not yet understand. If it was both, part natural, part altered, then our categories themselves must evolve. The boundary between nature and technology, between biology and machine, may not be universal. What we call artifact may elsewhere be called organism. What we call natural may elsewhere be seen as designed. Atlas may have been the first hint that our definitions are too narrow for the universe we inhabit. To live with such possibilities is unsettling. But it is also liberating, for it means that the cosmos is not barren, not mute, not finished. It is alive with stories, unfolding across scales far beyond our lifetimes. And in those stories, we are not spectators but participants. The very act of noticing Atlas changed the script. We saw it, we wondered, we recorded, we argued. In doing so, we added our own voice to the cosmic dialogue. Atlas was the question, our response was wonder. And wonder is not passive, it is generative. It creates art, philosophy, exploration. Already, Atlas has left its mark on our culture, inspiring hypotheses, fueling debates, entering the lexicon of mystery. It has become a symbol, like the pyramids or Stonehenge, of something larger than itself, something that invites endless reinterpretation. Future generations may not remember its trajectory, but they will inherit the questions it left behind. Questions that drive us outward, beyond fear, into curiosity. Perhaps that was the true mission all along, not to deliver information, but to awaken hunger, to make us restless under a silent sky, to remind us that we are not meant to sit forever on a single world, gazing upward without reaching. Atlas unsettled us, and in unsettling us it called us to grow. And so we wait, sharpened by its memory. Somewhere in the darkness another interstellar object is already inbound. Perhaps it will blaze more brightly, perhaps it will linger longer, perhaps it will behave in ways even stranger than Atlas. When it comes, we will be more ready, our instruments stronger, our imaginations braver, our questions sharper. We will meet it not only with numbers, but with vision. Atlas is gone, but its echo remains, and echoes, unlike objects, do not fade into the void. They ripple forward, carried in human thought, amplified by every telescope that turns to the stars, every dream that refuses to accept silence as the final word. The echo says, "Pay attention, the cosmos is speaking, the next messenger is already on its way." The disappearance of Three-Eye Atlas into the deep reaches of space leaves us not with closure, but with an open wound of possibility. What it truly was may never be settled, and in that uncertainty lies both frustration and wonder. Yet perhaps this was the greater gift. Not an answer, but a riddle. For riddles endure longer than facts. They force us to grow into them, to expand our tools, our imagination, and our sense of belonging. Atlas, whether comet or probe, natural relic or engineered messenger, is now part of the long chain of mysteries that have driven humanity forward. Think of the sky before telescopes. Comets flared and vanished, their meaning debated in temples and courts. Were they omens of doom, heralds of kings, torches of gods? In those days, uncertainty was fertile soil for myth. Today, Atlas stirs the same soil, though the tools have changed. Now the debates unfold not in temples but in observatories, in peer-reviewed journals, in late-night conversations between astronomers staring at data curves that refuse to align. Yet beneath the modern surface the same ancient impulse endures, to look at the strange visitor and ask, what does it mean? And perhaps meaning itself is the message. For what Atlas did more than anything was to awaken our awareness of the porousness of our solar system. We are not sealed, we are not separate, we are open to the galaxy, and the galaxy is open to us. This realization reshapes everything. It transforms interstellar space from an abstract backdrop into a highway of exchange. Fragments cross it, light crosses it, perhaps intelligence crosses it too. Atlas was a traveller on that highway, and by seeing it, we realize that we too are travellers, though only at the beginning of our journey. This journey will not be easy. To follow Atlas into interstellar space requires not only engines and fuel, but patience of a kind we have never yet mastered. For to send a probe to the stars is to begin a project not for years, but for centuries. The builders will not live to see the arrival. The senders will not hear the reply. And yet, if civilizations can learn this patience, then the galaxy may already be seeded with their artifacts, waiting quietly for the moment of recognition. Atlas, whether deliberate or not, reminded us that endurance is itself a kind of communication. There is also the possibility that we misunderstood its timing. Perhaps Atlas did not come by accident at all. Perhaps such visitors arrive when civilizations are ready to see them. For thousands of years, humanity had neither the instruments nor the awareness to notice interstellar wanderers. Only now, in the age of wide-field telescopes and vigilant surveys, are we capable of catching them in the act. The coincidence is striking. Two such objects noticed within a handful of years, just as our technology matured. Is this randomness, or is this choreography? If the universe is patient, perhaps it waits until the audience is awake before the play begins. If this is the beginning of a play, then Atlas was the prologue. It offered hints, fragments, whispers. It unsettled but did not overwhelm. It asked us to prepare without giving away the plot, and preparation is now our duty. The next visitor may not be so ambiguous. The next may reveal more or demand more. Will we be ready to chase it, to touch it, to ask the right questions? Atlas left us no answers, but it left us urgency. That urgency is not only scientific but existential. For Atlas challenges us to ask who we are in the cosmos. Are we alone, fragile sparks in an indifferent void? Or are we part of a greater chorus, one voice among many, awaiting the moment when harmonies emerge? If we are alone, then the responsibility is immense, to carry intelligence forward, to seed the galaxy ourselves. If we are not alone, then the responsibility is different but no less immense, to approach the other with humility, with caution, with reverence. In either case, Atlas is the mirror in which we see both possibilities reflected, and so the question lingers, suspended between science and myth. Was Atlas a stone or a signal? In truth, perhaps it was both. A stone is a signal if we choose to read it. A comet is a message if we choose to listen. Every fragment of matter that crosses our path is a reminder that the universe is not silent. It speaks in chemistry, in physics, in anomalies. It speaks in silence that unsettles. The message may not be deliberate, but it is still real. The cosmos is speaking, and Atlas was one of its voices. Somewhere another voice is already moving toward us. Its name is not yet known, its path not yet traced, but it exists. For the galaxy is restless, and interstellar visitors are inevitable. The next one will come, and when it does, the memory of Atlas will shape our gaze. We will watch more carefully. We will listen more deeply. We will wonder more bravely. And perhaps this time we will learn to step across the threshold Atlas opened. For the story of Atlas is not finished. It is only paused, waiting for the next act. The shadow of Three-Eye Atlas stretches far beyond its brief passage through our sky. It has become more than a visitor. It has become a threshold, a marker in our story that divides the time before we knew such wanderers existed from the time after. Its silence, its ambiguity, its refusal to be explained away, these are not failures of understanding, but invitations. Atlas was never ours to hold, but it was ours to witness, and witnessing has changed us. To some, it will forever remain a comet, fragile, fractured, undone by the sun's relentless heat. To others, it will remain a probe, disguised and deliberate, carrying within it the intentions of minds we have not yet met. To still others, it will be something stranger, an artifact that blurs the line between natural and artificial, between rock and message, between accident and design. Yet whatever label we place upon it, Atlas has already achieved something profound. It has shifted the way we look at the night. For the night is no longer mute. It is porous, alive, restless. It is a theatre of arrivals and departures, of voices carried not in words but in trajectories, in silences, in anomalies. Every streak of light may now carry significance. Every visitor may be a messenger. Every fragment may be a relic. Atlas taught us that contact does not begin with clarity, but with questions, and questions once born do not vanish. They spread, they multiply, they propel. The next visitor will come, perhaps not tomorrow, perhaps not in this generation, but inevitably. When it does, our instruments will be sharper, our missions more daring, our imagination more prepared. We may intercept it, touch it, study it up close. We may discover within its dust the chemistry of alien seas, or the circuitry of alien hands, or something we have no words for at all. And when that happens, we will think back to Atlas, the messenger that came too soon, the one that slipped through before we were ready, the one that planted the seed of urgency in our minds. But there is a deeper legacy still. Atlas forced us to reflect not only on what might be out there, but on who we are here. If we are alone, then we bear the burden of carrying intelligence into the galaxy, of becoming the senders of Atlases ourselves. If we are not alone, then we bear the burden of humility, of entering a dialogue that began long before us and will continue long after us. In both cases, we are not passive. We are participants in a universe larger than we can yet imagine. This is the paradox Atlas leaves us with. In its silence, it spoke. In its brevity, it endured. In its departure, it arrived. It was both comet and question, both fragment and mirror. And though it is gone, its echo remains. That echo will guide our science, our philosophy, our art. It will shape the way we watch the skies. It will remind us in every moment of doubt or indifference that the cosmos has already reached out once, and that it may do so again. The universe is vast. Stars are born and die, galaxies collide, black holes sing their silent songs. Against such immensity, it is easy to feel small, to feel erased. But Atlas reminds us that even in this immensity, connection is possible. A fragment from another system brushed against our awareness, and for a moment the distance collapsed. We touched, however briefly, the larger story of the galaxy, and that story is not finished. So we return to the night, not in despair, but in anticipation. The sky above is not empty, it is a page still being written, and one day, perhaps sooner than we think, another messenger will cross it. When it does, we will be ready to ask, to wonder, to listen, ready to step across the threshold that Atlas opened. Until then, we wait beneath the stars, holding the question it left behind. Because the silence of Atlas was never silence at all, it was an invitation we have only just begun to answer.